Hi, Kitty Pies. It is Lanickia, and I am coming to you with season 1, episode 3 of the EndGame called The Vault. Okay, it's a lot of stories, so let me try to give it to you the way they were giving it. So we finally see how Owen actually met Elaine and Sergey. He actually met them when they were in Australia, and we know this because Anthony and Val have broken down the picture that he took with them. So they narrow it down to Australia, and then they start going back in time. Now I'm going to go ahead and say that this part of the story. So they're in Australia. He's undercover, named someone named Peter, and he's trying to sell them guns. Well, as he's doing this, two men come in with a tattoo behind their ear. So when they come in with a tattoo behind their ear, Elena notices this and she says they're trying to act like they don't know each other, but they have the same marking and everything. So Owen is like, "Are you always watching?" And she said, "In this line of business, you have to be, and you have to look out for things." And she doesn't believe in coincidence. So once they see these men, they start shooting at Owen and Elena and Sergi. And we see Sergi and Elena are shooting back and they get the two gunmen, but Owen actually gets shot when this happens, and he begs them, "Don't let me die here." So they take him with them, and he actually wakes up, and they've doctored him up, they bandage him up and everything, and they tell him, "We know you're FBI." And they ask him about this family in Ukraine, and he says they run a small business, nothing important. And he says, and they actually tell him, actually, they don't. They have so many ties that they actually have footprints in America as well. Like their footprint is actually rather large. And they say they're looking for new American friends. And he's like, "You got the wrong guy," or whatever. And he tells them, they say, "Oh, we got a time to come," because he tells them that they're going to be looking for him. And he's like, and they were like, "Oh, that little American detail that's going to be coming for you, we got time." And he says, "No, you don't have to worry about them. It's my wife you're going to have to worry about. And Elena was like, "Ooh, sounds like a great woman," and everything. And so he passes out again. And so I guess this is just showing the start of these three people actually starting to work together and everything. So then we go to Bank 5, and we see at Bank 5 that, oh, sorry, it's late. And we see that at Bank 5 they have a host of, the hostages are there and everything. And they grab one woman and they put her into a safe. Now, Elena is telling this story about two friends and everything. And Val and them, they're like, "We don't want to hear this." Like, guys keep doing stuff. Now, Val's boss, he wants to gas them out, like, because they not only do they put the woman in they put her in the vault, right, and then they put a timer on, and it's 4 minutes. They have 4 hours. They have 4 hours until she runs out of oxygen. And so Val's boss is just like, "Let's just gas it out and go in there and save the hostages." And Val is like, "I don't think that's a great idea," and the director doesn't think so either, because people have died because of the gas and everything. And then while they're debating about this, Elena has taken over the news feed, and she comes on and she says that by the end of the day, the American people will love her, and they might not like her methods, but they'll love her. And she tells them about the woman who's in the vault for 4 hours. And she also lets them know the only person she'll speak to is Tyler Erickson, the news guy, because as we started this, we find out that he is the most trusted man and everything on the news again. So they agree to let him talk to her. They agree to let him talk to her and everything. So he has to go to the bank. So they, put him in his armor and everything, and he's going to the bank, and he's talking to Val, and she's telling him, like, "Is there any connection, anything?" And he's like, "No." And he had a comb, right? and he just goes stick it in her pocket. Like, he didn't even ask. He said, "Can I put that there?" Like, he's a jerk. He's a jerk. And so he goes in there and everything, and they sit him down and they tell him what's going on with the hostage, and he already knows that. And he's on camera because he couldn't bring his own camera crew because Elena has hers in there that they're using. So, excuse me, y'all. So they sit him down and everything, and they started asking him about the swan. And he's like, "What swan? I don't know what you're talking about. I have no clue." So while they're asking him that, they said, "That's the only way you're gonna let her out. You got to confess to the swan." So while they're doing that, Val is on the outside, and she's telling her boss, like, this has to mean something more. And so her boss is just like, "Go to the other side of the building." So she's about to go to the other side of the building. And Anthony tells her, like, "I'm caught in the middle between you two." And she says she's sorry and everything. But it's like, then stop relying on him. If you're really sorry, stop putting all this pressure for him to help you. Because this man need to keep his job. But anyways, they look and they see smoke, and she remembers that when Elena was telling her the story earlier about the two friends, she said, "Where there's smoke, there's fire." And so she's like, that can't be a coincidence. So she goes over there with their resources and everything, and the building is called in Russian, if you translate what the name of the building, which I think it was Labelle in Russian, Labelle, which translates to the swan in English. And so, excuse me, sinus. And so she's just like, "That's not a coincidence." And then when she and Anthony are talking, she's like, "Do you smell that?" And so they open up one of because it's a storage building. So they open up one of the containers and they find this woman has been murdered, her body on the inside. So they take her body and everything, and they, you know, find out who she is. They do analysis, and all that. So while they're doing this, they go to the prison scene, and we see Owen and Sergey, and he's like chilling. They eat at the mess hall. I think that's what they call it. I'm pretty sure that's what they call it, mess hall. And he sees a man, and he's like, "I think somebody knows me." And Owen was like, "What? Could this be trouble?" And then he's like, "No, no, no, you worry too much, friend. I'll take care of it." And so then later on, we see that the man is, he is from Sergey's home, and he does know him. And he says, so the man comes up to Sergey, and he's talking to him, and he's like, "Yeah, that's you." And he's like, "No, no, my name is Carl. I'm Colin or whatever." Because all the other prisoners are looking around, and he says, "Yeah, you're right, because Sergey is dead and everything." And so Owen was like, "He recognized you." And he was like, "Yeah, but don't you worry too much, friend. I'll take care of it." I don't know how he gonna take care of it. You need to get on Morris call and tell Elena what's going on so she can take care of it. But anyways, so then Owen just reminds him, we're on the timeline and we don't need no problems from this timeline. Um, so then we go back to Elena and all of them, right? So we go back to them, and the director is telling her, "We need you to let this woman out. Like, we can't have her dying on live TV. And what do you want?" And because the man doesn't know, Tyler doesn't know about the swan. "What do you want?" And she tells him, you know, people have friends sometimes, and that's worth the weight in gold. And like, she's talking in riddles, so they don't understand what she means. And so he tells her, if any of the hostages or his men die, there will be blood. She's gonna pay for that. And she tells him, "If any of my people die because of the gas that you're gonna throw in, there will be retribution, and it will be ooh la la." She's very pretty. Because when she said that, I noticed how really pretty she was. But so then Doke calls him. What was his name? Doke calls him, and he's like, that's Val's boss, and he's like, we need to bomb, like, we're running out of time, and they were running out of time. We need to bomb, and he says, do it, because I mean, he don't have any other choice. Elena's not letting this woman go. The director, Tyler Erickson, the newsman, is saying, I don't know about the swan, because even the hostages are like, what is the swan? Like, tell them so this woman can get out of here. You're killing her. This is going to be your fault if this happens. And he's like, I don't know. If I knew, I would say something, but I have no idea what they're talking about. And they find out the woman who's murdered in the freezer at the storage unit is Ming Lee. So they go to her mom, and her mom has no information. She's like, I can't tell you anything. Because she thought her daughter died of suicide. So hearing this is just shocking to her. So then they're down to 7 minutes, and they're just like, okay. So Doak tells Val, we have to go inside, and then she says, I know, and he's like, what? Like, we don't have time for you to go inside and bomb these people, gas these people. But then they tell him, hey, this seal is the pathways are sealed up. The tunnels to get inside the building are sealed up when they put a freeze on the bank to try to not let anyone come out. So he was like, unseal them or whatever. Now, meanwhile, in the bank, the hostages have put blindfolds around the bank robbers have put blindfolds around the hostages' eyes, and they're starting to move furniture and everything so you can't see. And then Elena comes back on the big screen, and she tells all the people, meet down at the bank, and she'll give more information. And so they're like, she's trying to gather a crowd, but why? So then while all these people have come down to the bank, right? And then when they're about to go in and gas, transformers start to blow. And Val said, we got to go in. She tells her boss, we need to go in. Like, that's her. She's doing this. So they run inside of the bank, but it's too late. The men have already left. And so they like, go out into the street. We can stop them. Like, what's the nearest exit? And she said, he was like, how did they get out? And they looked, and there was the vent through the vents. And she said, he was like, Val told him, you unsealed them when you wanted to bring the gas in, which they knew they were going to do. She said, you unsealed them when you wanted to bring the gas in. And so they're like, what's another way out? Like, what do these vents lead to? So they see the robbers, right? And they're about to get them. And then money starts flowing, right? Because remember, they gathered up money. So money starts flowing. And so all the people in the streets are like, free money. So they're like, reaching up. It's a crowd of people or whatever. And they're like, FBI, trying to get through the crowd. But they can't get through the crowd because the people is like, we're getting this money. And so by the time they finally get through, the bank robbers have gone. And all they have is like the mask that they had on. Excuse me. So then they go to the girl who was held hostage because they're thinking, why is she being held hostage? Or why is she been, why the girl that was held hostage, they're thinking maybe she was behind it. So they go up to her and they're trying to ask her a question. Val asks her, why did you come to this bank? And she said, because the bank manager called me 3 days ago and said it was, my loan had got denied or something. It was either denied or approved. I don't remember. But she said, so he told her, she said, I never applied for a loan. So he told her to come down because it might be mistaken identity. So she comes down to the bank and everything. And then Val asked her, do you know Ming? And she said, yes. She knew Ming. That was her friend. And she said, Ming, and she said, we found Ming's body. And she said, I knew she wasn't commit suicide. I knew something had happened. And she said, why is that? Because Ming was working on this story. Because Ming was a reporter, right? And she was working on this story. And she tells her that Ming, the last text Ming sent her, it said 1164. And so Val is like, okay, 1164, what does that mean? And but she goes to the bank, inside the bank, you know how they have a little locker, personal locker. So she goes and she opens up locker 1164, and in it, Ming has left like a little book that says, if anything happens to me, this explains. And we find out that Tyler Erickson is actually working for that mafia that was over in Ukraine and everything. He's actually working for, excuse me, Australia. I think it's a Ukraine though. They're located in Ukraine. But anyways, he's actually worked for them. And Ming told him she found out like some, like he, how he covers stuff up and helps them and everything. And so he and Ming kind of get into it. He said, but I didn't do anything to her, but I did make a phone call because, and the reason he's talking is because Val tells them she tells the director and her boss everything, and they're like, we can't get him on DNA because the material under Ming's fingernails was so deteriorated that they weren't sure if they were going to be able to get the person on DNA. And they were like, plus he wouldn't submit to a DNA, but she was like, oh, he doesn't need to. So Val goes to the Tyler Erickson, and she tells him about Ming and how she knows he was involved. And he's like, I'll never submit to a DNA. You have to do a DNA analysis. And she was like, I don't need to, because remember he put that comb in her pocket. She was like, I got the DNA. So that's why now he's talking. And so he's just like, I made a phone call. I mean, sir, you knew what was going to happen when you made that phone call. And you knew that woman probably didn't commit suicide. But he was like, I didn't do this. I didn't know that's what they were going to do to her. Or whatever, and I didn't hurt her. But they put him under arrest anyways, and they're going to find that family. Now, Val goes in and she's talking to Elena, and Elena says, we're more, she goes through her whole spiel again about, we're more alike than you think, Val, and we could be friends. And Val says no. And she starts telling Val how she knows, her favorite meal and all this information. And she said, did you get all this information from Owen? And that's when Elena was like, we could be friends. And Val says no. And she was like, she says, one day Val tells her, one day you're going to slip up and I'm going to get you. And she says, Elena's like, yeah, but not yet. Remember, I feel like she keeps telling you not yet. Like she knows that y'all, I feel like if Elena slips up, it's because she wants to. Like in the end, it'll be just because it's her plan to do this. And like, even if she does slip up, like, I don't think they're ever going to outsmart her. I just don't think that. I think that's and it's one of the reasons why we like the show, because even though, Elena is wrong and you're like, ugh, a part of me is just like, but don't get caught. Don't get caught doing this. But anyways, so Val goes home and she's resting at home, and she starts thinking about Owen and how he came home from being shot, and she was happy he was there, and she was kind of thinking they were in the wrong field. So then she sees this four-leaf clover on the dresser that Owen had given her, and she's looking at it, and then because she was like, it has to have some kind of meaning that he just gives me this. And then she looks at this book on their bookshelf, and it had a four-leaf clover, and she opens it up, and it's a USB drive in there. And of course, it's all going to make sense to us, I suppose. The show gets better every week, and I think the characters are going more into their roles and everything. So I'm enjoying this show. I will see you next week for another review. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.